next speaker is Monica Gagliano, who is a research associate professor currently based in the University of Sydney. In recent years, she has blazed the trail for a brand new field called plant bioacoustics, showing that plants do make sounds, and by demonstrating experimentally that learning is not the exclusive province of animals. Monica has reignited the discourse on plant subjectivity and ethical and legal standing. She'll be signing books after her talk, and that'll be just outside at the Entheobotanica information store. Yeah, that's everything. Here's Monica.
Okay, so the preamble is thank you for coming, and I'm already going to ask for your patience, because first of all, our cameraman is I'm going to drive you mad because I walk.
That's fine. I'll never get you to hold the mic.
I have tendency to walk. So,
I'll just give you some freedom.
excellent. And also, it seems like that.
Excellent. That's it. This is exactly how today has been for me. Time has been a trickster, space has been a trickster, and I'm going to be very careful how I move, and if I fall over or anything, it's okay. I think it's part of the day, so we'll see how it goes. And I guess the other part of the preamble is thank you, Leela, wherever she is, for a beautiful, for whoever was here, for a beautiful, integrating and feeling into all of the layers that we are made of. My job now is to bring you back right down, right here. And if I succeed, I will be very sneaky on you, and you will think that you're just right here, and instead we've been taking off somewhere else. But we'll see. So, as you can tell from the title, it's all about games. And so, of course, the intelligence of plants was part of the conversation this morning, the one that I came late to. And this second part is more about understanding or appreciating the games that we play, so that with that awareness we can really see what's happening, what it is that we are doing, even with our best intention, especially in communities like this, where I know the intention is good. We want to be good people. We want to change the world in a better place. We want peace. We want oneness. And of course, I'm going to do this pretty much through my own self-centered experience, but that's the only one I have. So what to do? So the first question would be for you. Which game do you play? So, of course, I picked two options for you to choose from, and there are two very specific games, and I'm sure that all of you know them. Well, of course, one is chess. And the reason why chess is important, we'll see it in a minute. The other one is pool. And I'm sure that no problem, right? Everyone knows these two games? Good. Now, chess is a game of rules. It's a very specific kind of game in the sense that you can't just make any move you like. You can only make any move you like within a particular set of rules. And what it means is like that you can actually play, as long as you follow the rules, you can play it, and it's independent of the physical aspect of you as the game player. Now, this is the classical example is the fact that a computer, so you don't need to be human to play chess. A computer can not only play chess, but can become really good at it, so good that it can even win against the human. And whether we call that intelligence or not is a different question. What it means is, and it kind of emerged a little bit as well this morning in the conversation, is a very specific, if we want to call that intelligence, it's a very specific context of intelligence. It's in the context of playing chess, a computer potentially can be more intelligent than a human, if you can be comfortable with that. But the cool thing about any rule-governed game, and chess is one of them, is the fact that basically as long as you can have manipulation of symbolic states, so you're representing a something, that's enough. You don't need to be there physically with the body. You can be anything in that body and you can do it, no problem. And as long as you follow the rules, all good. So in other words, chess is a very good example of a digital system. So you go set possibilities. You can take any of those, but not beyond those, because the others are simply not available. And, say that you have an option for a move that is either A or B. You can't take between A and B. It has to be either A or B. Now, of course, artificial intelligence, because they are digital systems, they're perfect for that, and they do really well. That's why a computer can actually win against a human. But what that actually highlights, that it's already like crackling and breaking down our initial idea of what the human intelligence might be, is that, well, if a computer can be better than a human, and computers, of course, represent the quintessential digital system, then there is a possibility that either we are not so good as digital system, or maybe we are not digital systems at all. But we'll see that. Now, let's just look at pool. Pool is a totally different game, because, first of all, you physically need to be there. And you need to be using certain parts of the environment as your extension, for example, and then your extension through the cue needs to hit the ball. And you might be wishing to make a particular move. Of course, you want your ball to hit the ball that is over there near the pocket, and you score. But there are so many other variables. It's so gray in between the white and the black that anything can happen. So pool, in a way, requires the physical interaction with the environment. And the physical part is the nut and ball of the game. And, you know very well that when you get, for example, nervous, you start shaking, and that's not very good for pool. But if you're about to lose, maybe that actually has an impact on how you're going to perform. So it's not like either A or B, but it's like anything goes. So a game of pool, like you can play chess, and actually someone was sharing with me, was it this morning or yesterday? Sorry, again, time. But someone was sharing with me how they were playing, it was last night. Someone was saying, oh, I remember when the first computers came out in 1977. And I was like, wow, I cannot remember because I was just born. Oops. And anyway, he was saying how crappy they were, and we're like, the computer would make a move, and then it would go to sleep, come back, and wait for the next move. And that was the speed at which the computer was playing the game. So chess is a game that, as long as the rules are followed, it can be played on timelines that don't really matter in terms of like when you compare it to pool, for example, where it's real time. It's like it's your turn, and you have to hit the ball. And if you're not feeling good, if you're not prepared or whatever, that's bad luck, that's part of the game. So how you feel, how your body is engaging with the space, how your opponent is relating to you, whether it's a friend or is a serious opponent, that is all part of the game. Whether the room is too cold or too hot is also part of the game. So in pool, pool is a good example of a very embodied, it requires the body, and embedded because it's really situated in the context. You can't extrapolate it from there. And so as long as these real-time physical interaction are honored, you go pool. And of course, pool is a good example of an analog system where you have this suite of possibilities, many of which are unpredictable to some extent. And the information is not broken in discrete bits and pieces like in a digital system, but is a continuous. So you're always approximating. You never know exactly. While with chess, you can know exactly what move you're going to make. Whether it's possible or not, whether you're going to win or not is irrelevant. So when we talk about intelligence, it would be interesting to see what bias, which is unconscious, we're actually subscribing to. And what I like to, my sneaky way, is to show you that actually, despite probably most of you here, as I showed you the two games, you would say that, well, life is more like pool. Chess is such a constrained and so artificial system, and the world is analog, it's not digital. So intuitively, you know that life is not black and white. And yet, when we talk about cognitive systems, at least in the context of science, but also in other situations, including psychology, philosophy, and all of those streams, often we think of them, especially in the modern times, as digital systems. And there is a reason for that. But it's got some consequences that shouldn't be underestimated. So if you play chess and you're talking about intelligence and cognition, what you're really saying is that cognition or intelligent behavior, it's a property. So it's something that belongs to the organism. It's something that I have, which also means that if I don't have that property, I'm not intelligent or I can't be cognitive. And in the context of plants, of course, this property that we are so attached to is often referring to the brain and the nervous system. And of course, plants don't have either, and not just plants, but many other organisms don't have that. And yet, by subscribing to the fact that we're going to play chess here, if we follow that train of thought, then we have to agree, yeah, plants cannot be cognitive, are not intelligent, simply because they don't have the property, the structure that would allow that. Of course, if you're playing pool, what you're seeing in cognition is a process rather than a property. And the process doesn't belong to anyone, but is made by everything and everyone in the picture. As we saw, like, you need the body, you need the space, you need the opponent, you need the balls, you need the cue, you need the temperature of the room, and many other things that you're not even bothering paying attention to, but they're totally present and part of the picture. And so cognitive activity seen from that perspective, or intelligence seen from that perspective, is talking about interactions, relationships, and particularly organism environment. And environment is extending to everything that is not the organism. And we'll get that too in a minute. So if this dichotomy, or apparent dichotomy, seems kind of self-explanatory, it's like, yeah, well, so what is the problem? Well, the problem is that actually we do subscribe to the game of chess more than pool when we talk about cognition. And primarily is a bias because the entire field is coming out of psychology. And psychology is, of course, primarily, it was always focused on us. So we have that initial, very anthropocentric perspective. This is not a judgment. It's just like, this is where this story comes from. Now, over time, of course, we have extended beyond the human, and we have graced some animals, those ones that have brains and neurons, of course, because they have to have the property, otherwise there is no even talking about it. So we have included some animal species, not all of them, and of course machines. And it's interesting because the perspective of a game of chess as cognition actually comes from the machines in the first place, because it comes out of cybernetics, which was born kind of in the 50s, 60s, and basically we were building computers and see if we could use the computer to understand how we work. And so, of course, the computer is doing this digital thing and is really good at it, and they become better and better as we improve them. So it seems obvious that it's like, well, if we are going to be like the computer, and you need to have this infrastructure to be able to do the trick, then if you don't have the infrastructure, there is no talking about anything else. It's done. So in that model, you have a very linear way of thinking. And the way in which this works is pretty simple, literally. You have perception coming in, and you have a box, and that's perception. So input. Then there is something in the middle there, which is cognition, and that's supposed to be the processor. And then it includes as well, like, you're going to remember a few of those bits of information so that you can keep processing. And then you have output, which is basically your action or the behavioral expression of that processing. So, of course, as I said, if you don't have the processor, then how can it work? It doesn't work. Imagine a computer without a processor and a memory chip. It's not a computer. It doesn't do the job. And of course, by logic, there's nothing wrong with that. If you subscribe to that, then plants are definitely excluded from the conversation, include not only plants, but other systems, as I said. But I'm going to talk about plants because I'm biased, and I'm okay with that. So I'm going to use an example, and I apologize for those that have already seen this, but I think it is a good example to give the idea of where the problem lies. So this is a little pea plant. They were growing in my greenhouses and labs at the university. And I was interested in seeing how these cognitive processes could occur in places or organisms that actually don't have the property. And maybe they are insinuating, by disrupting that, they're insinuating that maybe we are getting cognition in general a little bit wrong. So I looked at plant learning in various species, and then one of them is the pea. And of course, because I'm an animal ecologist by training, I just borrowed what I knew already from the animal field and applied. And of course, I'm sure that you know the story of the Pavlov dog. And so this is one of the learning paradigms and is well known in animal systems. And we know that most animal systems can do this to one degree, to some extent. So the story of Pavlov, of course, is like, Pavlov gives the dinner to the dog. Then there is this anonymous bell that doesn't mean anything to the dog. And then Pavlov decides, I'm going to ring the bell before delivering dinner. And he does that a few times, and then suddenly something that was totally meaningless, the bell, acquires a meaning because it's always followed by dinner. The dog is not stupid, as we were talking today about being stupid or intelligent. The dog is definitely not stupid. And it's like, And so just the bell on its own triggers something, of course, is a part of the learning experience. And the dog starts salivating even if there is no dinner in sight. So what this really is telling us, like, first of all, the ability to learn by forming this association between things that don't have a particular meaning, but they acquire meaning because they are paired with something that does have an important meaning. Of course, dinner is what the dog really is after. Means that there is, you need to be discriminant. You need to perceive, first of all. Then you need to be able to tell the difference between dinner and the bell. And not only that, but you need to categorize how much do you really care for dinner? Because if you don't really care much about dinner, then the value of the bell is not as valuable. And so there is an internal value system going on. Like, all of this must be going on inside the dog and is making all this evaluation and working out what he wants. And then you have the behavior. Sounds familiar, huh? Input, process, output. It's a chess game. So, and of course, if you are going to do this, it means that there is someone in there that is got a subjective life based on its own feeling and its own experience, and is going to make those decisions. And not only that, but because when the bell rings in the last time, when the bell rings and there is no dinner around, what it also means is that the dog is actually like forecasting the future, because I know dinner is coming. There is no dinner, but I know it's coming. I've learned it. Through the association, I can tell what's going to happen next. So, of course, there is an idea of extension of the perception field, and also memory. And of course, if you are extending your perception field, there must be something that is of a concept, more of an abstraction, like a representation of what dinner might be, and you have it in your mind somewhere in the box that has got the cognitive label on it. Now, just for the sake of, fairness, let's take the plants through exactly the same problem. And so I put the pea under the same regime, tested for exactly the same question. In this case, the pea wants blue light as dinner. And we already know this is a phototropic response. Pea, young plants in general, but pea, when they have blue light from one direction, they will just go for it. And they will be very, intentionally going to it because that's food. And without light, as we know, they can't do it. Now, instead of the bell, I need to come up with something else. And after many failures, as we do in science, it's like you try lots of things, and then eventually say, okay, I think I got it. And I use this little fan, which actually is literally this big, and is one of the fans that I used. Well, they are the fans that we use for computers, funnily enough. So the fan on its own doesn't mean anything to the plant. So the plant just carries on. If the light is in both, if it's uniform, the plant just carries on doing its own thing. It doesn't care about going in one particular direction or away from one particular direction just because there is a fan there, which is good because the fan needs to have no meaning. So we are ticking the boxes. So then just as Pavlov did, like you present the fan and then you give light. So, fan and then dinner, fan, dinner. And then at the last time you just present the fan. There is no dinner, there is no light. And yet, just like Pavlovian's dog, the pea is like, I know what the fan means. And I know dinner, like the light, is going to come straight after this, because through experience, I know that these two are associated, which means that now the fan that didn't have any meaning whatsoever for me has got a very important meaning. It's telling me what dinner is and where it's going to come from, when. So you got time and space encoded in that bit of information. So just like the dog, you know exactly where I'm going. The ability to learn is about forming this association, and so there must be an internal value system. Who is doing this? And if you do have an internal value system, then there must be a subject, someone doing this, someone that is evaluating, because not all P do this. The majority do that. But also dogs. Not all dogs are so good at, some are more fast than others with dinner. If you have a Labrador, then it will definitely work. If you have a poodle, maybe not so much because they're not so fast about dinner. So even that variability, that individual variability is important because it highlights the fact that this is not a black and white thing. And then, of course, if you, just like the dog, if you are predicting where light is going to come, then you're extending your perceptual field. So the information that are available to you in the environment right now are kind of being expanded with what you know is going to happen. And even if it's not available right there, it's available to you through learning. And so if the food was a concept in the mind of the dog, then by logic, the food, the light, is a concept in the mind of a plant, whatever that is. So until very recently, and now there is like a funny giggle with myself, because I totally subscribed to the game of chess, and I didn't even realize. That's why I thought it was important to bring it up. And actually, when I spoke to Rachel, it just, like, the light just went on for me. And it was like, oh my God, I just realized this. And she was like, well, why don't you share that? So, and this is very disruptive in a way. First of all, with myself, which is always what I do. I just have to disrupt here. And then it's like, oh, everyone needs to know this. So then I go and spread it. So the disruption is exactly on this linear way of approaching cognition, input, processing, output, and which is what we do, but we never really question, is actually that really the game that explain what's happening here? What if there are other explanations? And this doesn't mean that, maybe the plant actually doesn't do what he's doing, or the dog is not doing what he's doing, but it's just how the context, how we place those observations, those experiences into context that matters. And matters because, as you see, the repercussion of how we see these results, and in general how we see the experiences that we have in the world, do matter, and they create something different. So, chess, as I said, it comes from the cybernetics. Dudes, most of them were dudes. And according to this view, which is in the technical term would be like a cognitivist view, plants cannot be cognitive, clearly, because they don't have the infrastructure, the property, which brain and neurons are the magic tools here. And yet, the plant seems to perceive the local environment. If we subscribe to this and we are trying to explain according to this model, it is actually building some discrete and abstract representation, is projecting its own mind to the future and expecting this concept of food to arrive, abstract from the current environment into the future. And then, of course, it's transforming this representation into goal-directed action. the plant is actually growing and moving and showing me that it knows what's going on. So, as you can see, there is perception. The box in the middle is the problematic one. Like, it's doing what we think brains and neurons do, but it doesn't have one. So that it's like, oh, damn. And then, of course, you got the output, the behavior. So here is your model. And as you can see, the brain sits there on the golden throne. And the important thing about this, as you can see, perception, cognition, and action are nowhere interacting with each other in a kind of osmotic way. They are quite concealed within their own separate boxes. And then the environment is kind of like the thing that sits around. But again, it's a very compartmentalized view of the process of the world, of what's happening. So this will be a game of chess. There is only a few moves that you can make, and you can't go, gray. It doesn't exist. So if you don't have a brain, you can't be cognitive, and you don't have any kind of intelligence. But the data are showing that there are signs of cognitive system. Like what the plant is doing is exactly what we would say any other organism would be doing, just that they happen to have a brain to do it. So it's pointing to the process rather than the property. And of course, this is a very computational approach. And the reason why I'm bringing it up is because watch what we do, even when we talk about in a very open and very holistic way. And I do this all the time myself, and I'm trying to catch myself. So this is new for me too. But it's like, what do we do? It's a very computational approach. So we talk about, I downloaded this information after my meditation. Yeah? Who is downloading what? And like, my memory chip here, or I'm recoding. It's not that that's not appropriate, but we need to be careful of what is pointing at, the undercurrent bias that is sitting there unseen. Now, let's have a look at what would happen if you take the post-cognitivist view, which is the other version, like the alternative, which is not new, and it actually kind of emerged pretty much at the same time as the original, cognitivist approach emerged as a counterpart, because always in this space, there is always the other. So, but of course, having a cognitivist approach, so playing chess, works better for certain ways of building and creating the world. And what we are seeing is the result of that, boxes, rules. And if you don't play the rules, there is no space for you. And you need to be of a particular kind. And if you're different, that's not good. It can be. So you can see how this is starting to weave a little bit deeper. Now, if you're a post-cognitivist, and there is many forms of this, and there is a lot of blending back and forth as well now, but you're playing pool, which means that you actively explore the environment. You don't just wait for things to arrive to you, but you are actively participating in that process. And your behavior is flexible, is context sensitive, and as you are changing in response to your environment, the environment is changing in response to the fact that you're there and you are there doing things. So the two start not to be so separate. It's easier. And it becomes a bit more of an osmotic system. And then, of course, the entire goal is to be able to thrive, flourish in the best case scenario. So this is how a model like this will look like. So you had the straight line, and now you have this, which of course, it freaks everyone out because, oh my God. But actually, it's simple and complex at the same time. It's simple because it's just saying like, everything is open, everything is interacting. You cannot be here, no matter, even if you put yourself inside a room on your own with nothing else, you are in a space. By the very fact that you're here, you are already interacting. And not only that, but your internal physiology, whether you have a nervous system, a brain, or a vascular system, or whatever it is that you are, and your physical external, so the bark of you, the body, sits and is situated inside or is interacting with the environment, the apparent container, that is around you. Of course, perception and action, then are no boxes, are just what happen when these three components, and possibly more, are talking to each other all the time and feedbacking onto each other. And cognition is not a thing, it's not a property, but it represents the process that brings all of these crazy interaction and movement together. And for us, as much as we would love, especially as scientists, as much as we would love to play chess because it's so neat and so clean and straight, really it looks like life is dirty and messy, and it looks a bit more like that. So we are playing pool, but we are pretending that chess is the game. So the unit of analysis, or the cognitive system then, is talking about this entire thing, and it's a subjective thing. So if you're doing any of this, and by virtue of being here, no matter what form or bits and pieces you're made of, ultimately you are a subject, never an object. You cannot be, basically. It's impossible. That's maybe is the only impossible move, to be an object. Because an object automatically says that you are separate from the rest. While you are completely open, they are an open system. And not only that, but you are extended. Because what you think this is the beginning and the end is actually never. It's like the inside and outside are you. And you can see how suddenly we're talking a different language. So from this perspective, of course, plants are cognitive, like everything else. And not only they actively explore the environment, they modify the behavior in a way that is flexible and is context sensitive, but of course they do it because they want to thrive. My peas want the light, that's dinner. What is so strange about that? And why would we be even surprised that others, aside from us and the few elected ones that have brains and we have, given them, you can be cognitive now. Aside from those, why should we be surprised that actually life is intrinsically intelligent by default, by its own essence? And of course, it's an emergent property, and the emergence arises from all of these interactions. Dynamic, of course. And so when you do science, this is how I understood science. It's like you come up with a paradigm, for example, Pavlovian learning. You do your experiments and you collect your data, which just means that you set up a way to observe what a plant or a dog are doing in response to something. And then if you find, for example, can plants are able to learn according to the Pavlovian paradigm, if you find that the answer is yes, you don't just throw away the data and say, sorry, but we're playing chess and this doesn't fit, so data out. No, you throw away the theory. Obviously, the theory is the one that is failing you, not the data. The plant is doing what it's doing, regardless of you. And if anything, is out of kindness, I think that is, okay, fine. Let's play this game. We're playing pool? Okay. So this is a much more of an ecological approach rather than computational, which means that it takes in account the ecologies inside, the surface, outside, extend. And that's why, in a way, it's a funny follow-up from you, Lila, but it feels to me like, this is just another way to talk of the same. And if you look at it from this perspective, of course, it depends very much whether plants are intelligent or not. It depends very much on what game you want to play. And if we keep subscribing unconsciously to a game that limits boxes and reduces things and eliminate a priori what is possible, well, then we already decided what life is about. We have already decided everything, which is very convenient if you're a control freak. And our society is very much a control freak society. But if you want to open and allow, first of all, allow life in and out, allow it to flow. It's allow the process of life to make you be you, whatever you want to think of you as. And then we're talking of a game of pool, we're talking about ecology, which is really this interactive process. Otherwise, we might end up making this kind of statements. All good news, the results shows that it's a metaphor, so a representation, which is what a computational system would do. And you have a very real knife stabbing you in the back, and you're not seeing it because it's unconscious, it's biased. So all of this to say that the game that we subscribe to unconsciously, and that's why it requires a lot of care, a lot of love to really take the time to what am I unconscious about? What is it that I'm not seeing? And they are difficult because you're not seeing it. That's the point. It's like they're out of sight. But to be able to allow life to show you the things that you cannot see, and instead of freaking out, it's like, whoa, no. Allow them in. And as we were talking about this morning, sometimes this allowing comes out in bliss and beautiful, oh, what an amazing opportunity. And some other times comes out, in kind of painful or very disruptive or, not so pleasant experiences. But it's just like sometimes you need to break down something to build the new, right? So all of these disruptions that break the system to break through the system and allows the little holes. It's like, oh, I see. And they, again, connecting what Lila was saying, I guess on the final step is like, you don't have to it's easy because you don't even have to make any effort whatsoever to actually chase this. You can't chase it. The moment you chase it, you're playing chess. You don't chase it, you just allow yourself to be disrupted, allow yourself to be broken down, but not like, oh my God. But it's like, yeah, you're just like, today is a perfect example of I had so many disruption to get here. And even now, I could feel that my step could just pull the cable any moment. And I didn't turn up this morning because I was chatting away. And all of these disruption that could, if I take them very personal, if I'm playing chess and I take them very personal, then suddenly I'm building up another box that says like, oh my God, so not respectful, and the guilt of like failing, to be whatever it is, the picture of me that is supposed to be, and all of that. And instead to be able to laugh, basically, with yourself first, and then you can enjoy with you can allow the other to join you. But like laugh about the fact that through this disruption, for example, throughout the day, including time and space, I'm able to share this now with you, which I didn't know what the ending was. So this ending is emerging from the sharing of me walking through space and time. I had to be late, otherwise I couldn't tell you this, right? And I had to almost pull everything down, otherwise I wouldn't be able to share this. So, and again, it links really perfectly with this morning comments about mistakes. And if I had a small perspective inside a box, if I was playing chess, then yes, it was a grave mistake not to check the time and come here when I was due. If I'm playing pool, and this is not that I'm trying to get out of it and not taking responsibility, but if you're playing pool, then you know that sometimes the unexpected is what wins the game. Thank you. I just watered down the microphone. We have some time for questions if you can be bothered, but up to you. I thought I already spoken enough, but anyway. Otherwise, you can all have a nice cup of tea or something. But it's
Monica, have you heard about the science of no ethics? You might not even agree that it's a science.
No. Yes, was the answer to the question. And no, I don't have a problem. I was like, sorry, cutting you short. Yeah.
So no ethics?
Yeah, there is a center for the Institute of Noetic Science in the US. And very fringe, but that is not a judgment. Like, It's just that it needs more. And it needs more, not because it needs more, but because this system needs more. And what I've learned is, because of course, you know, my temptation always is to be like, stuff it. I'm just going to do my thing, and I'm just going to, you know, just play, and who cares? But it doesn't turn out that way. It turns out that my role as the little actor that I play, like my label, is actually to disrupt within the system. And the disruption arises because when I'm in the system, I look totally legitimate. I am totally legitimate. And then there is something that is not quite right. And that's like you know, so this paper, for example, has received some serious aggressive reactions by colleagues who actually wasted a lot of time to write another paper to say why this paper is so bad, yeah? And of course, they didn't base it on any data that they had. It was simply like, well, because we don't agree. It's like, okay, you're free to think whatever you like. But if we're talking science, that's where you get exactly where is your data. And so if you want to play chess, I don't really enjoy chess much, but I'll play with you. So, and then they realize, oh, but maybe she's playing pool. So there is this little moment that they just don't know, and it's that uneasiness, that I think is my kind of role for now, to play. So noetic science and what they're doing there, it's really cool, and I keep an eye because I want to learn, and I think that you need to be open to anything and everything while maintaining a skeptical mind, so that you're actually not just taking in because they say so. Because I know my scientists, I'm one of them, is like, don't believe anything I said, but make up your own mind. And so that area is kind of pushed aside by the mainstream science, but there are so many ways of knowing, and that's one of the issues, I guess, that we have subscribed to one particular way of knowing, and not only that, but we have constrained even that way, because science is beautiful. I mean, look at this, yeah? And I think James was saying this morning, you know, is the accumulated knowledge that we are expressing in this way now. Why not? But when it becomes dogmatic, any form of dogmatism is dangerous. So, but I think that science is at a time when it's revising itself. And I was talking to Ruth this morning when we were chatting, and one of the questions that she asked me was exactly that. And I said, like, well, I think that there are a lot of colleagues who are in the closet. So they wish they could just openly just like, you know, I like what you're doing. But saying that is actually an admission that, like, I want to do that. I want to play pool too. But if I play pool, it's dangerous and I might lose, and chess is safe. And I get the grant, and I get the next promotion, and I get the next, and I got a career, and I'm safe, and the world is all good. And it's actually been very interesting, because these last couple of weeks, and especially this last week, have been quite taxing. As I was sharing this morning, I totally failed with my interacting. But because I was forced to play a game of chess, and I was like, I don't want to play chess, you know? And there was this real like, and eventually I had to. It is the only place where I can engage, even knowing that it makes no sense. So again, it's the paradox, and I try to justify myself and my own existence in that space as, well, that is a part of you. Like not long ago, you were one of them. One of them. And so what would you do if it was you there? If you were that, and someone was coming and doing what you're doing, what would you wish from them to deliver to you? And all I come up with is always gentle kindness. There is no hurry, because there is no time and space. So it's like there is no hurry. And if you apply gentleness and care, then you're nurturing something. Otherwise, you're just going to keep beating against each other and like, I'm right and wrong, which is the duality that doesn't resolve anything. And but yeah, this week was my downfall. I entered the game of chess, and then it was like, no, you can't say that. And then I saw myself starting, which is a perfect experience. I saw myself starting spiraling into that. And I was like, but I know that that's not, and then you are like, whoa, pulled in. And those are the biases, of course, they're still sitting there that I can't see. So I'm like doing this, and these experiences are useful for me because they allow me to check, where are you really at? You know? So, kind.
So this morning you were talking about how we were talking about how there's this one self, and so you're seeing yourself in myriad forms. Is that, do you remember saying that?
I think I said that. So, yep.
And so I'm interested in that as a scientist, how that works into the scientific method, where it's all about analysing and how you then separate yourself out from the plant that you're looking at, or like how you reconcile those two things as a scientist, if you do at all.
You mean, so doesn't science put the subjective away and should be just objective? And yeah? Is that duality. And you don't tell them, first of all. So you do it without explaining, and not even to yourself. Which means that you don't, again, because otherwise you're doing the same. So it's like, the objectivity of science is intrinsic in its method. Science, per se, it's a method. And again, it was spoken this morning, I think. And so, and it's a beautiful method, one of many, so it's not the only one, but it's a method of approaching and exploring the thing that you feel is around you, surrounds you, outside you, the other, right? And really, the truth is that even when we are doing these experiments, of course, if you think of the emergent model, you are, like me as the scientist in the room where my pea is growing, I am the environment, so I'm there. And so I'm part of the cognitive system of the plant, as much as the plant and everything else is part of mine. So it's a question of translation. So the results, as you can see, is like I did one experiment, and you can totally subscribe to one or the other, and you're okay. In one, it disrupts, and it's like, whoa, what are we going to do with this? The other is like, oh yeah, this makes sense, but the data doesn't change. It's the same data set, and it's the same response, the same result. So it's a matter of translating and interpreting. And I guess that is the trick, or maybe the skill that I'm trying to learn. How can I thrive for perfect communication? Which means, again, it reminds me what Lila was talking about, sometimes it's not what you say, it's what's behind that is speaking. So it's like, how do I enter those spaces, which I know very well, and stay there in that container, knowing that I'm everywhere, but pretending that I'm not. And it's a trickster, it's like you're playing. But that's the thing, it's like, one thing, if that play is unconscious, then you're like, then you start believing that you're either one character or the other. And instead, I actually don't believe that I'm either or. And I'm gonna be this disruptive character or whatever character, different colleagues probably label me very differently, right? So whatever you want to say that I am, that's fine. I know that I'm none of that. And that's all it matters here. So it's but the philosophers and the anthropologists actually have been really good and kind of avant-garde in this, because especially the anthropologists and the ethnographers, they are very interested in the making of. So the ones that work on the making of science, they look at this, and their disruption comes from the outside, and it's like, yeah, well, you're talking about your very objective approach to your science, but you're there. And it's like, yeah, exactly. So in a way, I'm learning a lot by collaborating in discourse with these other disciplines, because they are kind of giving me the words that otherwise I just, because I'm constrained by my own environment, and so I don't know what the right word is to just like there. And when they deliver those words, and it's almost like they go a little sparkle to it. It's like, I'm gonna use that. And then, of course, I use them, and they are planted in a context where they don't make any sense yet. But slowly they'll grow. And by the time they grow, I'll be gone. So, who cares? Time? Okay, bye-bye.